Thank you all for making the time to join us on today's webinar. My name is Natalie Taylor and I'm a content marketing writer here at Feedvisor. I'm joined by Brian Liebman, Feedvisor's VP of Sales and a seasoned merchandising and e-commerce expert with a track record spanning from Amify, PBS, Purchasing Power, and Living Social.
Hey guys, great to be here. Nat, appreciate the lead in as I'm jamming out here to Springsteen. It's always a good time.
We also have with us retail and grocery expert Gary Hawkins, founder and CEO of the Center for Advancing Retail and Technology, and a pioneer of personalized marketing.
Good to be with you today.
Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a link to today's recording, and there will be time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have questions throughout, we encourage you to enter them into the space provided, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. So the COVID-19 pandemic has drastically disrupted the retail industry and shopper behavior, and more consumers than ever before are relying on e-commerce marketplaces for essential and non-essential items. But even before COVID-19, online marketplaces had already massively reshaped e-commerce. $1.6 trillion was spent across the top 100 global marketplaces in 2018. Including Amazon, Alibaba, Walmart, eBay, among the others listed here. And that made up 50% of global e-commerce. And in 2018, the world's top 100 top online marketplaces sold more merchandise than all standalone retail websites combined. And in terms of US e-commerce, Amazon is without a doubt at the epicenter with over 38% of market share. Amazon serves a critical role in consumers' lives. According to our 2019 survey, so pre-COVID, 66% of consumers were beginning their search for new products on Amazon. And 89% said they were more likely to buy products from Amazon than other e-commerce sites. And of course, brands know they need to be where their customers are. Before COVID-19, brands were already recognizing Amazon's importance to their e-commerce strategy, and they were increasingly open to selling on the platform. Our data from 2019 found that 55% of brands were selling on Amazon, and of those who were not, 48% were inclined to do so this year. And in the wake of COVID-19, these numbers are sure to increase. So today we're going to talk about the coronavirus impact on brands and consumer behavior, and how those effects are going to shape e-marketplaces and retail strategies moving forward. So Brian and Gary, of course, everyone here is familiar with the retail crisis that ensued at the height of the pandemic. What were some of the top challenges brands and sellers faced on marketplaces due to COVID-19?
Brian, you want to kick us off? Or?
Sure. Love to. Yeah, so I mean, at the very beginning in early March, the major challenges that both brands and sellers faced was one, uncertainty, but more important than that, it was ability to get inventory and then get it into the marketplaces. I think that probably lasted for about 4 or so weeks. Amazon did a relatively good job of beefing up their workforce, bringing on 175,000 additional seasonal workers to enable that to, facilitate. And then quickly over time, we saw, shipping times go from, 3 weeks to 2 weeks to 1 week. And now it's almost close to where we were, pre-pandemic. Overall, going forward from a marketplace perspective, I think that it's going to be, really interesting to see how, brands are going to further embrace it. Nat, you just referenced a stat that 55% of brands are currently on marketplaces and Amazon specifically, and of those 48% are likely to get on there in the near future. I guarantee you that when we put out that next brand survey in a couple months, it's going to be significantly higher than that because of the need to embrace not only e-commerce in general, but Amazon, which has been leading the way.
Yeah, so I'd agree, Brian, with what you just said. From my perspective and the sectors that I do a lot of work in, it was absolutely supply chain problems were the top issue that I saw, right? Brands, manufacturers, sellers being able to maintain product stock, inventory, availability out to shoppers was huge, especially across a lot of key categories that people were looking for immediately. But then I found it fascinating as, you know, we saw a lot of those out of stocks move beyond the food and the essential cleaning supplies and that type of stuff you needed at home to all the things people need as they're working from home now. Like you mentioned a little while ago, you know, you went out and bought a new desk. You know, everybody's buying webcams and headsets and everything else to now live in the online world. But beyond supply chain, again, as I think you referenced, delivery became a really big thing, right? Getting the product to that shopper. And then, you know, through that and more on the platform side, you know, there's a lot of user experience issues.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that going forward, the challenges that brands and sellers are likely going to face, both in marketplaces and in traditional retail, is going to be liquidity and cash flow, right? So I think it was Forbes magazine came out with an article, you know, a couple weeks ago that said, you know, if the pandemic and the quarantine goes, you know, beyond 3 or so months, half of, you know, bricks and mortar retailers will not be able to reopen. And we're right at that cusp, right? So we're reopening slowly. Every state and city's opening at a little bit of a different time. So we're right at that cusp. So, you know, maybe it won't be half that reopen. Maybe, you know, you know, we're fortunate it's a much smaller amount. But if you think about it, if 200 or so thousand retail establishments have been closed, and even at a conservative rate, 20% of them remain closed or can't, you know, stay viable because of liquidity and cash flow, that's going to really upend retail in general. And it's going to be a big push for e-commerce, specifically marketplaces, which seem to have an advantage or already an embedded advantage. And I think that, you know, if e-commerce in general was, you know, 14.5% of total commerce, you know, I think this past month we saw it creep up to 25%. I think you're going to see that fast track hockey stick approach where, you know, there's going to be muscle memory. People are going to stick with, you know, marketplaces, and there's going to be a long-term positive impact for e-commerce in general.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, the COVID crisis has absolutely accelerated, obviously, online and e-commerce over the last, you know, 10 weeks. But it's really accelerated almost everything across retail, right? Whether it's online or in the physical world. And yeah, I think we're just at the beginning, and it's sad to say so, but I think we're just at the beginning of seeing a lot more bankruptcies. You know, we've already seen Neiman Marcus and Pier 1, JCPenney. I'm reading GNC is either filing or is, you know, expected to file here. That's 5,000 locations. There's going to be a lot here. And that in turn is going to drive, I think, a lot more online when people can't find what they're looking for in brick and mortar. The other interesting sort of intersection between the online world and marketplaces in the physical world is around shopping malls, shopping centers, right, that are now having to deal with curbside pickup. And it's sort of an interesting area to be watching right now as, you know, brands and retailers are trying to sell more online, and yet being able to understand that that inventory is available in that specific store where that shopper can come pick it up in an hour. And, you know, all the logistics involved in doing that. But, you know, I was just on a call yesterday with some big players in that world, and it's going to be fascinating to see that develop.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the overall retail landscape is radically going to change. I know there's some questions later on that we'll address in much more specificity. But yeah, I do think that it's going to, you know, reshape not only malls, but retail, but more importantly, for us, you know, e-commerce and marketplaces in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we want to just take a quick poll, ask the audience. Of course, there were a lot of supply chain challenges, fulfillment challenges with COVID-19, but did the crisis have a positive or negative impact on your e-commerce business? And I'll just give everyone a few seconds to submit their responses. Okay.
Yeah, so not surprisingly, 73% of everyone with us today says it's positively impacted their business, and that's likely because the vast majority of people, are really engaged in e-commerce and modern marketplaces. And from a Feedvisor perspective, we've seen very similar results. In general, category agnostic, we've seen improvement from our, brand and seller partners anywhere from 8 to 46%, depending on the category that they're in. Some categories specifically, whether it's grocery and CPG, have seen much higher, spikes, mainly because they're essential products and people need it. We started off hoarding, and ever since it's tapered down, we've still seen in the last 4 weeks increases of about 45 or so% in grocery and CPG, which is really impressive. In other categories, such as electronics, which started out down the first 4 or so weeks, we've seen that not only stabilize, but increase from a Feedvisor perspective across our portfolio in all marketplaces, up 27% in the last 3.5 weeks, which is quite remarkable. And then other ones, which, I think are interesting as well, apparel, which, really was hit hard for the first 4 or 6 weeks of the pandemic, which was down 28 or so%. The brands that we've surveyed and represent are showing a 14% increase over the past 4 or so weeks. So again, things have stabilized. I think there's a different mentality out there. There's no longer that hoarding mentality that we once saw. I think that, to your point, their supply chain has opened up. Items are now able to get into and out of Amazon much more easily and readily. Brands and sellers are able to take advantage of this on a much larger perspective. Brands have shifted inventory, if they can, from their brick and mortar location to e-commerce and Amazon specifically. So again, I think that, while, 73% have seen positive impact, I would likely think that going forward, the long-term impact is going to be much greater.
Yeah.
So what are some of the commonalities around the brands and sellers who were positively versus negatively impacted?
So I guess from my perspective, I think any brand or seller that was seen or perceived as essential during this time was obviously a big winner, right? Again, in the world of retail I play in, it was all the canned goods, cleaning supplies, disinfectants, all that type of stuff, right? Anyone selling those products was a clear winner in this. I think, from a seller standpoint, it was those platforms that were ready for scale, right? Obviously, Amazon, Walmart, great. Amazon, and an interesting point, Brian, we can come back around to this, towards the peak of sort of panic buying, we saw, at least I saw in the grocery world, a growing number of retailers that were, their sites were being overwhelmed, and they were beginning to effectively park people in a holding area online and then slowly, let them into the online shopping site. Amazon, I think, was similarly impacted, but they took a little bit different tack and maintained, instant access, if you will, for Prime members. And, we're parking new customers before allowing them to come in as traffic allowed. And I thought that was really interesting, because what Amazon was doing was effectively rewarding their loyal customers by maintaining access and saying to new shoppers, yeah, you got to wait your turn.
Yeah, Gary, it's a great point. I mean, although if 70% of households are Prime members, it's really rewarding almost everyone who's a shopper there. But I completely agree with you, right? I mean, even large companies that theoretically would have stress tested e-commerce sites like Costco were having, issues with people, cart to checkout, which I find remarkable, because you think that all these stress tests have been done for Black Friday and Cyber Week and all of that. But yeah, you're 100% correct. I mean, I think that a lot of folks weren't prepared. A lot of brands and retailers were, kind of left flat-footed. And I get it, right? This was the ultimate black swan event. Nobody really foresaw it or knew it was happening, except for maybe Bill Gates in a TED Talk 10 or so years ago, right? But I mean, these things really can't be planned for. But I would likely, I mean, again, from all the articles I've been reading from brands and retailers that have been, positively impacted, the number one thing that all the CEOs and leaders are saying is that their ability to be nimble, their ability to say, hey, this was our go-to-market approach. This was how we thought we were going to, get our share of voice and our growth tactics. And, it's now been upended, and we need to kind of shift and shift quickly. And those that were able to do so, I believe are the ones that are going to be viable, that are going to survive and are likely going to be able to thrive going forward. The ones that are sort of, inundated, didn't necessarily have a strong, D2C through e-commerce or through modern marketplaces have had challenges. And I think that you're going to see major shifts going forward. A lot of people are going to try to be nimble if they can, to embrace some of these more, modern strategies that they may have not wanted to in the past because of, legacy success.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great call out. I absolutely agree with you. We, again, a lot of our work is focused on new innovation in the retail industry. And we sort of viewed what was happening as innovation in real time. And it was really interesting because we saw a lot of retailers that historically have been far from innovative, far from fast moving, all of a sudden, have to do things really, really fast. And many of them did respond really well and were very creative with some of the solutions and what they were doing to take care of customers, stay in business, keep things moving. But that innovation in real time, absolutely, really, really important. And yeah, again, back to the point we made earlier that the crisis has just accelerated everything. We are seeing a lot of retailers looking at, all the vulnerabilities, all the weaknesses, all the gaps that this crisis stress test has really exposed and working to address those.
So that goes into our next question. How will CPGs and grocery brands specifically need to be nimble and adapt to meet this new surge of e-commerce demand for that category?
So Gary, this is your wheelhouse. You want to take this one?
Sure. So I guess two big things I think that we're seeing and have seen this very dramatically is a rush to automation. While grocery online sales exploded, and they did, and Brian, you threw some numbers out there a few minutes ago. I've talked to retailers that saw their online business go up, twofold, threefold, even in some cases, 8 or 10-fold. I mean, just massive growth, literally overnight. And while more sales is a great thing, nearly every supermarket retailer is challenged by much bigger costs that have accompanied those greater sales, right? Nearly every retailer is still manually picking and fulfilling each online order. And that's just created a whole cascading set of problems from, regular shoppers not being able to get through the aisles because there's so many order pickers. It's contributing to the out of stock problem and supply chain issues and so on. So we are seeing literally a stampede right now from regional up to national retailers towards automation, micro fulfillment center technology, robotics, any kind of automation to speed up order fulfillment, make it more efficient, less costly, and more accurate.
Yeah, those are all great points. And there's just so much to unpack here, right? I mean, if you think about it, the grocery category has razor thin margins to begin with, right? So if you layer in additional complexities and additional steps from, grocery store to the customer, you're going to have to increase prices, and ultimately the consumer is going to end up bearing those. But to your point, investments in technology are going to offset some of that. It's going to create a better customer experience. Theoretically, you'll get fresher food in grocery, right? Because you won't have to go from store to home. It can go from, fulfillment center or from distribution center to the home. So I think ultimately there's going to be a very positive impact there. I think what's most amazing is that, grocery coming into this pandemic was the most underutilized e-commerce category. I believe it was something like 3.6% of people were utilizing it, which is incredibly small. And a lot of these, players in the forethought were investing in these technologies to try to get there. And some of them were really successful. I mean, Target acquired Shipt, which enabled them to really, thrive in this last couple of months here. But ultimately, you're right. Like it's going to be all these new and innovative approaches that enable us to go forward. And I think grocery is going to be one of those categories, and CPG also, that is completely upended. I read a stat that 70+% of people in the United States made an online grocery purchase for the first time in the last 12 weeks. That's 70% of the entire population, which is a staggering number considering that penetration was at 3.6% prior to that. So again, are people going to go back into the stores? Absolutely. I think people enjoy that experience. I think you mentioned this before in a previous call that people are social by nature and want to shop. But again, I think we're building muscle memory and people are getting used to shopping online more and more, especially people that never embraced it in the past. So I think you're going to see a significant increase in e-commerce, grocery, and CPG sales. I think that this is a game changer specifically for this category, and I think it's exciting. Personally, I love the delivery, and I typically, like to go into the store and pick up my own stuff. But for me, I'm kind of like, it saves me an hour or two a week. So it's great.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely an inflection point, right, in online grocery. And I think, there's two other things, maybe a little bit more subtle, that are happening and going to be happening here beneath the surface. One is around how products are packaged. If you think about it today, so many products, bag of potato chips, cookies, etc., the package is designed to look nice on the shelf in the store where you've traditionally bought it. But that package that looks nice may not be the best package to protect that product when it goes into a box or a tote for, automated fulfillment or, delivery to home or even shipping, right? So we're going to see, I think, a lot of changes coming here in how products are packaged. The other thing that absolutely has happened here, and we're going to see more and more of this, is a move to products being placed on some kind of replenishment, automated replenishment system, right? Some of the numbers I saw from Amazon were that Amazon was picking up somewhere around $3 to $4 billion a month incremental revenue, and they were transitioning somewhere around $1 billion a month of that over to replenishment, subscribe and save, and their recommendations platforms. I think the smart supermarket retailers, again, in this world, are going to be looking at, I know they're looking at that, they're looking at how they can also implement some type of replenishment. And I think that is absolutely going to be a game changer here too. I know, we ourselves, all our kids are grown, but we've got a couple pets. So, it's far easier to have that bag of dog food or cat litter show up at the door than having to go to the store and haul it home.
Yeah, those are two great points, and I completely agree. I think the packaging is really interesting, right? Because to your point, nobody wants a broken bag of potato chips or broken chips that get delivered. I suppose Pringles had this thought out many decades ago where they had that heart cylinder. I do think that the packaging will be interesting and how this materializes out, mainly because as opposed to the way Amazon's done their Amazon Basics, which really just come in, a corrugate box, and it's not really consumer friendly. I do think that from food specifically, anything you put in and on your body requires a higher level of due diligence. And I think that these brands are going to need to invest not only in stronger and better packaging, but also packaging that resonates when it gets in the door as well. People want to know that it is that legitimate brand, the one they see on their shelf. So I think that merchandising, whether it's in store, on shelf, or even direct to the home, is going to be equally as important. And yeah, your last point was so true. I mean, subscribe and save is a game changer, not only for Amazon. I think that you're going to see a lot of folks follow suit and, build off of it because everybody needs certain things to come in time, whether it's, whether it's vitamins or, to your point, dog food and cat litter. There are certain things that, people need on a regular basis. And I think that it's just a recurring revenue stream, which is logical and smart for brands to move into.
I think the last thing I'd mention here is I think this has also been an inflection point for the role of voice in shopping. That we're going to see more and more people becoming more and more comfortable shopping by voice, right? Speaking to Alexa or Siri or whoever, and reordering things by voice, shopping by voice, all of that. So another interesting area. I think we're going to see really mature fast.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some big winners there. I mean, we've already seen some clear-cut winners in the grocery category. Instacart by far is the #1 winner there. Their sales have more than doubled in the past 8 to 12 weeks. A lot of that's because they partner with 20 or 25 different types of delivery stores, large chain stores. Whereas other ones like Peabody have remained flat, and I think Peabody probably had an unfortunate restructuring right before the pandemic. But I mean, by far, Instacart was the largest winner in the delivery area. And shockingly, I mean, Prime Now they had to suspend Prime Now for several weeks because they couldn't keep up with demand. And Amazon, so I mean, I think that's really interesting. And then I see we moved on to more winners and losers. I would say the other big winner in the CPG and delivery area is probably DoorDash. They partner with a lot of mainstream chain restaurants who have been able to stay open, or at least identified curbside pickup or delivery options. Some of their competitors haven't done as well, such as Grubhub, mainly because they aligned with the smaller bricks and mortar restaurants, and they were forced to close. But it's interesting. I think you're going to see some mergers there as well. I mean, I've been reading Uber is thinking about merging with Grubhub, so you'll see some alignment there and some growth.
Yeah. So no, I'd agree with both those examples. I think if we sort of broaden that picture out, obviously supermarket retail has been a big winner in this, both in-store as well as online sales growing significantly. And, I think we're going to see that be a lasting trend for supermarket retailers. More and more people eating at home to the detriment certainly of restaurants and food service over time. I think it's also going to be interesting. I think shopper behavior has changed in another dimension too. While people are quarantined at home and eating more at home and so on, I think a lot of people are learning about all the things they used to spend money on that they maybe don't need to spend money on going forward, right? It's hit home to a lot of people. Gee, look at the money I'm saving not buying that $5 Starbucks coffee every day. And I think there's a lot of things around that we're going to see some real change in.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, lunches and coffee, I used to go out every single day to get it. Now I'm making it at home and probably saving a boatload of money if I actually counted it there. But you're right. I mean, and other winners, I mean, I think the obvious ones are, Walmart, Target, and Amazon. Amazon posted Q1 results of 24% increases, which was a staggering number considering how much they were doing prior. Their stocks at an all-time high. Walmart, revenue increased by 74% in Q1. Target's probably made the fastest market growth because they probably had the smallest hold on it before. But those three, right off the bat, have been huge winners. Clearly, extended marketplaces, e-commerce in general. Have seen great growth. And I'm not sure about you, Gary, but some of the brands that we've seen grow, and Lululemon already, tops in the athleisure area have doubled their overall sales. People that are working from home, staying at home, wanting to be comfortable, things like that.
Yeah.
And from a category perspective, to your point earlier, anything that has to do with working from home, we've seen growth there. There's lots of winners there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we're going to take another poll for the audience. With winners and losers in mind, has the crisis changed your brand's position on Amazon and or other e-commerce marketplaces? Just give a couple more seconds here. Okay.
All right, so let's see what we have here. It says the two number ones, my brand was already selling on Amazon, is now prioritizing Amazon over other channels. 53% of people said that. And 32% said my brand is looking to expand our Amazon e-commerce presence into other channels such as Amazon and Walmart. And I think that is just very logical, right? I mean, we mentioned before that those are the three major winners. You know, a lot of, you know, brands that were, you know, specialty store, bricks and mortar, department store reliant, really in that luxury category have had a hard time, you know, shifting. I think that, you know, we mentioned earlier that, you know, 48% of the 45 that weren't necessarily on Amazon before were looking to get into it. And, you know, that's going to be significantly increasing. So these numbers are not a surprise. My only surprise is that they aren't larger, right? I would think that, you know, leaders of, you know, companies would sort of be all in on e-commerce and modern marketplaces, really focusing towards that omni-channel approach, really focusing towards mobile, really focusing towards modern marketplaces and Amazon.
Yeah.
So what are your predictions for the future of physical retail stores? I know, Gary, you touched on this a little bit, but if you want to share a bit more.
Yeah, so again, in the world of supermarkets, and I think we can even extend that out to, you know, drugstores and potentially even discount stores, I think we're going to see the development of what I think of as hybrid stores. Again, to the point we made earlier around more and more automation coming into the industry. I think we're going to see supermarkets evolve to a format where you know, all the fresh food that people still want to pick out themselves, tomatoes, steaks, whatever it may be, fresh produce, will still be there for shoppers to choose, and that'll be the front half of the store. The back half of the store, behind the wall, will be all the packaged stuff, boxes of Cheerios, bottles of Coca-Cola, etc., that will be fulfilled through some kind of micro-fulfillment center tech or automation. So, you know, the experience is going to change a bit in that you'll place your order online for the packaged products you want, or even at a kiosk or something on the way in the door, pick out your fresh foods, pay for them, and then pick up your tote of all the packaged stuff on your way out the door. So we're going to see that change. The other change, you know, we've already seen is a lot of the self-service food that was available, salad bars, hot food bars, prepared foods, all that gone, right? And I think pretty good chance probably never to return, or at least not return for a long time. So we're going to see all those types of foods that we used to be able to pick out ourselves are now going to become packaged or go behind some type of counter, you know, on a service basis.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I mean, let's just be honest. Physical retail is not going away. It's just going to be radically different than the way that we've come to know it and love it and embrace it, right? So if you want to go from, you know, large to small, I mean, shopping malls are going to be different. I read an article that 30% of all tenants, retail tenants in the commercial space, were defaulting on their April, you know, lease payments. What does that mean? It means that, you know, some of them will be able to catch up, some of them won't, but it's going to sort of change the way things are happening at a macro level. The anchor stores at malls are going to be different. You know, Gary, you already talked about some bankruptcies earlier. You know, JCPenney's is likely going to be, you know, announcing some sort of bankruptcy. Lord & Taylor, Neiman Marcus, you know, Modell's. These are all anchor stores at large shopping complexes that draw people in. So you're going to have to see a very different approach. I likely think that you're going to start to see, you know, more of the Walmarts, the Targets, you know, become these anchor stores. You're going to see, you know, the Home Depots as well. Wouldn't be surprised if they take, to your point earlier, having, you know, take that what I call the Best Buy approach, where Best Buy 10 or so years ago said, hey, we can't compete with Amazon directly, so we're going to have micro stores within our, you know, stores. They have their Amazon kiosk, and they have their Sony kiosk, and they have this kiosk, right? So you can kind of go and have that curated, branded experience in that larger environment. And I think that you're going to see a lot of that happening. I think that in the specialty space, you're going to see a lot of, you're going to see a lot of acquisitions and mergers. I think that, you know, we're hearing that Facebook is looking to get into, you know, the retail space or the physical space, you know, creating their own marketplace, potentially Amazon, you know, purchasing JCPenney so they can get into it. I think there's going to be a large shakeup altogether. It's not going to go away retail. It's just going to be radically different than what we've come to know it as, which isn't bad, because at the end of the day, usually the strong survive, and it's going to be good for the end consumer.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think if we take this question and just open it up a little bit more, that, you know, absolutely retail stores are still going to be there. They're going to radically change, but I think we're going to see a radical transformation on really the entire supply chain, right? If you think about, you know, the entire process of moving a product from point of manufacture through distribution to that end shopper, right? Historically, most of that has flowed through a brick and mortar store. And while brick and mortar is going to be there, it's going to change. I think we're going to see a lot happen sort of behind the scenes relative to the rest of distribution and how that's structured and how products flow.
So what technology solutions can brands leverage to succeed moving forward?
So I'll call one out here that I'm seeing already develop in, while it's starting in grocery retail, and think of that as the anchor, it's being opened up to other retail verticals. And that's this notion of logistics as a service. So we're seeing some companies that are taking micro-fulfillment centers. And again, these are automated systems that can handle, you know, 2,500, 5,000, up to 10,000 different SKUs of product that are stored within this automated fulfillment machine, right? For automatic picking. We're seeing these things positioned in a neighborhood or in a marketplace where it's not just groceries that are being fulfilled through these things, it's also the local drugstore. It's the, you know, hobby shop. It's the discount store. Multiple merchants are putting products into these things that are servicing that local area. So it's this idea of logistics as a service. And I think as this develops, and this is happening in other markets, happening in Israel, it's going to be starting in New York here in the US. I think we're going to see brands evolve how they look at distribution and have an opportunity to effectively go direct to these local logistics services to sell and distribute products.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's so much opportunity here. And earlier we talked about winners and losers. I mean, I guess we could probably say, I mean, technology solutions specifically for retail and e-commerce specifically are big winners. I mean, these are, you know, and there's a lot out there, but, you know, this is really the number one thing that I believe that brands and sellers are going to need to, you know, focus and invest in to be viable and to, you know, stand out from the competition. I mean, just a Feedvisor, we've seen, you know, significant, you know, growth in the last, you know, 8 or so weeks. And I don't see this slowing down. I think that, you know, the brands that really are going to push forward, push the envelope, really want to have that great, not only brand experience, but the customer experience, are really going to be all in on technology across the board. And you're right, it's going to be on logistics, it's going to be on automation, it's going to be in e-commerce, it's going to be on omni-channel, it's going to be on mobile, it's going to be on social, it's going to be across the board. I don't know if there's any one technology that I think is going to be that game changer, but I know that across the board, those that are investing in technology are putting themselves in a great position to be successful.
Yeah, so absolutely. And the other area I just mentioned here related to tech is any technology that aids in creating a touchless or contactless shopping or transacting experience, right? So think Amazon Go, right, is the easy one. You know, I can walk in, pick up what I want, walk out the door. I don't have to interact with anyone. You know, we're seeing a lot of interest in that space. You know, interest in things you never would have thought of before, like digital receipts. So I don't have to, you know, take that piece of paper that the cashier is handing me anymore in the store. You know, contactless payment, right, which has been there for a while, seeing a lot of more interest in that. You know, the ability to verify age if I'm going in to buy a bottle of wine or you know, beer or whatever, being able to wirelessly or in a touchless fashion, you know, verify age, identity, all those types of things.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. It's for a lot of people, it's going to be an exciting time. It's going to give ulcers to a lot of others.
Change is a scary thing, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
So let's ask the audience, in a post-COVID world, what do you see as your greatest source of opportunity? Wrap up in a few seconds.
All right, so again, not surprisingly, 57% said e-commerce marketplaces, 22% social media marketing. So again, this is not surprising at all. It's logical, it makes sense. And again, my only shock is that it's not a higher number there.
So Brian and Gary, what are your predictions for how the retail world is going to change in the next few months and also the years ahead?
Brian?
Sure, I'll jump in. I mean, as the economy opens, and it looks like, you know, each state, you know, city's opening at a different pace, but it's opening, and positively so. I think that, you know, you're going to see some of the changes that we referenced earlier, and I think that you're going to see in the upcoming weeks and maybe even months, you're going to see retailers and sellers really be aggressive. So there's been a lot of inventory backlogged in stores and in distribution facilities. I think you're going to see a lot of competition to sell it relative and a lot of sales. We mentioned earlier, cash flow is king, and that's the number one way on how to generate the cash flow is by liquidating, you know, excess inventory. Amazon just announced a few days ago their June 22nd summer sale, as they're calling it, really geared towards luxury brands to help them move through some of their inventory. I think you're going to see a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity on creating, you know, different types of events to move forward. But again, I think that as long and hopefully there are no setbacks, I think that, you know, we're going to sort of move forward. Retail is going to be evolving. People are going to, you know, want to go back into those retail establishments. I think people are, you know, tired of being quarantined. If you look at any of the images of people in the Ozarks or the Jersey Shore, I mean, there's just massive amounts of people there that is, you know, craving, you know, fresh air, the beach, outdoors, out, you know, it's, you know, to get out of the house. So I think that, you know, there's going to be opportunities for brands to capitalize and maximize on this. And I think that, you know, the next several weeks to months is going to be extremely telling.
Yeah. Completely agree with your comments, especially around a lot of brands and marketers, retailers discounting product, get cash flow kickstarted and clearing out old inventory and so on. I think the other side of that is something we haven't really broached yet on this call, and that is just the massive economic devastation that's going on in this country. What are we up to? 42 million people unemployed right now. All the small businesses that have gone away. That's going to create just massive pressure on retailers and brands, everyone looking to sell anything to keep prices down. We're going to see a lot more couponing. We're going to see a lot more pressure on promotion and promotional activity. And again, in the sectors I play in, we're going to see a lot more focus on private label products that are typically, lower priced.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, people will likely stay away from discretionary purchases, really focus on core or essential. I think I read a survey that said 7 out of 10 people are only going to be spending their money on essential products. So in your space, groceries, clearly essential. But I do think, you are directionally correct. I mean, we have, 15, 18, 20% unemployment. It just means that people are going to be much more, shrewd with their dollars and how to spend them. So brands and sellers are going to have to be that much more creative and aggressive to attract the consumer buying dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the takeaway here is that there's just going to be massive change that's going to be happening everywhere.
So honing in on the next few months that are ahead, how will brands be impacted if schools do not reopen in the fall? If, like you mentioned, Gary, if the economy is slow to reopen, if Amazon cancels Prime Day, all of these kind of short-term events that are coming up, how are these going to affect brands?
Yeah, so like to the first one, I think that's a great example, right? What happens if schools don't open? That's going to hit particular product categories really hard, right? All the back to school supplies, and I don't know how many billions of dollars of school supplies are sold each year, but it's a lot. I'm sure there's going to be a huge impact there to apparel, right? Kids don't need a new bunch of clothes to go back to school with in the fall. So I think there's going to be a lot of impact across certain product categories, I guess, is how I think of it.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a shift. So instead of buying notebooks, they may buy Chromebooks, right? Because you're going to need to work, study from home. I also think that, having an 8-year-old daughter in 3rd grade myself, this past 12 or so weeks has been somewhat challenging to, homeschool or educate her, while, working. But I think that, going forward, there's going to be a lot more structure put in place from educators and institutions to enable this to happen going forward. But from a retail perspective, I do agree with you. There's billions of dollars at stake, and brands, or at least the smart brands, are going to figure out ways on prioritizing what makes the most sense. So yeah, pens and notebooks maybe be deprioritized for, computers and printers and things like that. At the end of the day, we all hope that school is open and, we are back to, school as we know it. But I think that we need to be prepared and put contingency places in place. I think that there's also other events that maybe not as large as back to school that we all should be talking about that could be impacted. We have Halloween, a really big shopping event. We have Cyber Week and Black Friday, huge events. I mean, some brands do 60+% of their entire year's GMV during that week, right there. So again, I think that the next couple of weeks, next couple of months are going to be extremely telling. And even if things do open up, to the points that were made earlier, I do think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of change for consumers to really figure out what makes the most sense. And to the point that you just made before, Gary, I think that there's going to need to be a lot of creativeness to attract those buying dollars, specifically if the economy is still hit hard, and it likely will be. I mean, we're not going to have 40 plus million newly employed jobs in the next couple of weeks. It's going to take some time, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think the longer it takes for the economy to open up, just the more that pain is going to be extended, right? Because even some of the rules or regulations, as things open up, like restaurants, can begin to open, but only at 25% seating capacity.
Yep.
Those economics just don't work for restaurants, right? They're going to open up and probably lose even more money than if they were just shut. So I think that there's sadly probably going to be a fair amount more pain to come here.
I agree, specifically in commercial real estate. I think commercial real estate is really going to be hit hard.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And all commercial real estate, right? The obvious examples are like the shopping malls and the strip centers and stuff, where retailer after retailer is filing bankruptcy. But even office buildings. I mean, how many businesses have learned that, gee, we can let a good portion of our workforce work remotely from home, and if we're doing that, we don't necessarily need those 10 floors in that office tower in the middle of Manhattan, right? Or Los Angeles or wherever. So no, there's going to be huge impact to real estate.
Yeah, great points.
So we are running a little short on time, so we're just going to wrap things up with our final question. What is going to be the new normal for brands and retail in a post-COVID world?
Yes, we touched on a lot of this earlier. I think that there's going to be, rapid change, as we mentioned. I think there's going to be an arms race to see who comes to the top. Is Facebook going to really be able to get their foot in the door in their marketplaces? Is, is Amazon going to be in the retail footprint even more so than they are right now? I think that you're going to see a lot of change. Bankruptcies, the names and brands that we've come to know and come to love may not be cash flow positive, may use this as an opportunity to sort of right size. You're going to see a lot of retail stores that, may not go bankrupt, but are going to use it as an opportunity to right size. Macy's, which has hundreds and hundreds of stores, may open a third of them or half of them or 3/4 of them and not open up the underperforming stores. So yeah, I think that there's going to be, mergers and acquisitions. I think that there's going to be, shakeups and bankruptcies. I think that there are going to be, new players that enter the space. But at the end of the day, it's all going to hinge on technology and innovation and the ability for brands and retailers to be nimble and embrace this new world that we're, moving into right now.
Yeah. So agree. I think the one word I keep coming back to, and a lot of discussions I have, is just acceleration, right? It's whatever pace retail brands, physical stores were moving at before 3 months ago, it has accelerated a lot, and it's only going to continue to accelerate because there's an interesting thing here. If you stop to think about it, we've all seen and talk about the exponential growth of technology and innovation, right? And if you look at the actual innovation or the exponential growth curve of computer processing power, we are at that point of inflection right now, where it is just going to really begin to accelerate. And you think about all the change that's happened, and yet what's going to be happening. And now all of a sudden we've got this COVID crisis that has impacted the massive retail industry at that inflection point. And it's going to be sending, I think, the world of retail off in new directions that are going to be hard to picture.
Absolutely. So one final poll to our audience, right before we hopefully might have time for 1 or 2 questions for the Q&A. But if you're interested in learning more about any of the topics that we discussed on the webinar today, or if you'd like to learn more about Feedvisor or CART, the Center for Advancing Retail and Technology, please connect with us. So we do have a couple questions here that we can start for the Q&A. So Brian and Gary, what is happening in categories with high percentage driven by gift giving, high percentage of sales driven by gift giving?
So Brian, you might be able to field that better. Not a lot of people give groceries as a gift.
Unless wine is is a gift, right?
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, no, I mean, so gift giving is interesting, right? So, you know, typically, you have gift cards and other things that are, you know, hugely giftable. I think right now, what we're seeing is gift giving is down somewhat, but across the board, it's mostly being delivered. You know, people are having drive-by birthday parties. They're driving by and honking. You know, so again, they're dropping cupcakes and things off ahead of time. I think that you're going to have, you know, really creative ways on how to be giving gifts, whether they're electronically driven or otherwise. I think that, you know, gifts is really going to be driven, at least in the short term, based on the ability of the retailer or the brand to deliver the product in a timely time.
Yeah, agreed.
Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. There was a lot to cover. I think we covered a lot of ground, and that was really fun. So thank you, Brian and Gary. We appreciate your time and your expertise.
All right. Thanks, Natalie. Brian, enjoyed talking.
It was a great time, guys.
As a reminder to everyone listening, we will be sending out a link to the recording shortly. And for those of you whose Q&A questions we didn't get a chance to get to today, we'll be sure to follow up with you. So with that said, thank you again to everyone, and stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.